Most brand content gets completely ignored, and it's not because ideas are bad, but because it's missing a few elements that actually make people stop scrolling, get emotionally invested, and then remember what you said. In fact, you see about 5,000 ads and usually can only remember a few of them. So there's some important elements you need to have in order for your content to be the stuff that people actually remember versus just that regular other 4,997 posts that they see a day. So today I'm going to show you exactly how we fix this, and we're going to talk about 5 ingredients that turn boring posts into content that actually connects and converts. This is the recipe for posts that people cannot ignore. So I'm going to go through the ingredients really quickly. The first ingredient is you need to have a story. Stories are how people think. Our brains are just wired to pay attention to them. So where brands dump information by saying stuff like, this is what we sell and this is what we offer and here's all of our features, which features are just a race to the bottom anyways. I mean, there's always going to be somebody that's offering more features at a fraction of the price with twice the results. So it's not only boring as hell, but it's not really a good way to sell. Nobody really shares a random fact at a dinner. They usually share like stories. So let's just say you're a fitness brand, right? And you want to stick in people's mind. Instead of posting, our protein powder has 20 grams of protein, you should tell the story about somebody that you worked with. And maybe it was a working mom who was exhausted by 2 every single day. And so since she started using your product in her morning smoothie, she now has energy and she's been chasing her kids around and, texting you how much better she feels. So there's some emotion sticks. Obviously, that's a very fast and vague story. So you want to make sure the stories are real. And, before you post it, you should ask yourself, what's a story or personal experience that I can share that actually shows the actual change that my product creates? And even if you're talking about features, you can still pad it with stories. So that's the first ingredient that we typically use. Okay, so the second ingredient is a statistic. Stats give your story teeth, and it makes it a lot more inarguable. So the mistake here is that people, they throw out advice and they don't really back it up with data. So it kind of just sounds like an opinion, which it's much easier to disagree with an opinion than it is a statistic or data, especially if that data comes from credible sources. Like when I write posts that have data in them, I'm usually using research and case studies from, Ivy League institutions. So, again, with the fitness example, if you're like, consistency is key in fitness, which is everyone knows, you can use a statistic to reframe that and be like, 80% of people who hit the gym and they just go 3 times a week for 3 months are more likely to build a permanent habit than somebody who goes 5 times a week. So suddenly, and if you back it up with like the credible source where that should have come from, I don't know if that's a real statistic or not. It's not a thought, it becomes like proof and it becomes less arguable. So what I always do when we work with people in the lab is I say, let's grab a set of statistics that back up every point that you're making in all of your content. And we put together a large document. That way we can always quickly reference any data that's third party that backs up that what we're saying is true. Okay, so ingredient number 3 is what we call it a mistake and fix. So you call out a mistake and then you give the fix. People lean in hard when they hear most people do this wrong because nobody wants to be the person making a mistake. It's kind of actually FOMO. So if you were a clothing brand, for example, my sister works for a clothing brand, so it's the first thing that came to mind. Most people think that quality means expensive and they ignore the fit. And so if your clothes fit right, they typically look 10 times more expensive no matter what you paid. So sometimes it's actually better buying cheaper brands of clothing and getting them tailored. And we offer custom tailoring with all of our clothing purchases for free. And it will look better. You could buy the nicest brand ever. If it doesn't fit right, it's still going to look cheap. So that's an instant jolt of value. It doesn't just tell people what you do, it tells them what they shouldn't do, and then it shows them the fix. And it's what makes your your advice feel valuable instead of really generic. Okay, so another thing we do is we use metaphors. Metaphors make ideas stick because they connect something new to something people already understand. And when brands use like jargon, and I always say like too many 3-syllable words, people they check out. So if you're in coaching, like for me, I teach people about branding, and I say your brand isn't a megaphone, it's a magnet. It clicks a lot better. If I work in skincare, I might say your skin barrier is like a brick wall and moisturizer is the cement holding the bricks together. People get it immediately. It's a metaphor that's easy for them to understand. So an easy way to develop good metaphors is you compare your idea to something the audience already knows. Things that you learn in grade school are always the easiest things to go off of. So ABCs and how to walk and, a schedule, like things that you learned early in grade school are always the easiest metaphors because they actually also sound naturally easy. You're like, oh, learning ABCs wasn't that hard. Okay, so the last is a proof point. So this ingredient is where you show receipts. And if you make a big claim and you don't have any backup, like you can be like, we get amazing results, and people are like, prove it. So, it's the objection that nobody actually says, and it exists in almost everything you do. So, if you're like a physical brand, you of course can use before and afters, especially with like that clothing brand example. But if you don't have that, you can usually ask for testimonials. Or get 5-star reviews. So with brick and mortar businesses, we always do like a review requests for people if they don't have any social proof online. We text all the clients that we know are going to give us a surefire win. And for information companies, what we do is we typically will put out free content, and then we'll say, did you find that helpful? What was the breakthrough? And then we'll take the screenshots of people's replies, and we'd be like, we have a bunch of happy people. So it doesn't have to be massive. On some of my pages, I have like 1 or 2 quotes. I just like that they exist. They're really specific. And I always just make sure, let's back up a claim with at least one piece of proof, even if it's really small, because that's an easy way to kind of just handle that objection really quickly. So what if you combined all of that, and I'm a consultant. So I'm going to start with a story. It might sound like this. Last month, my client Jake was spending $3,000 a month on Facebook ads and getting maybe 2 leads. He was ready to quit digital marketing entirely. Then I'm going to do the mistake and fix. So here's what he was doing wrong. He was targeting everyone interested in fitness. The fix, we narrowed it down to busy dads who work at home. All right, and then I'm going to back it up with a stat. So within 30 days, his cost per lead dropped by 67%, which would still be terrible, I'd be like, I don't know, $800 cost per lead, but that's okay. And then I'll include a metaphor, which is, think of targeting like fishing. You don't throw your net in the entire ocean. You have to find where your specific fish actually swim. And then I'll hit it with a proof point, which is Jake went from 2 leads to 23 leads per month, which again, the math doesn't actually math here, because if it was a 77% reduction in lead, I was homeschooled at EMA. I know that's not real data. So here's his dashboard and screenshot showing the proof. So I combined all 5 ingredients to make one post, but you can also run those as individual posts. So again, a story, a statistic, a mistake and a fix, a metaphor, and a proof point are what you would want for basic elements of a good post, whether it's an organic or a paid ad, or short or long form content. And if you found this valuable, and I'm not even using my 5 points to make this video, you can like and subscribe below.